You're listening to the Marketing Attractions Podcast. Conversations on how nonprofit attractions are increasing attendance and sharing their missions through marketing. Your hosts are Ryan Dick and Jenny Williams of Attend Media.
Jenny, today's topic, how nonprofit attractions can work with social media influencers. And we got a guest.
Yeah, super excited about this one. We've got Alyssa Fagan from ATL Bucket List. ATL Bucket List has been around since 2015. Alyssa's kind of one of the original influencers on Instagram and has built a huge following over her 9 years in this space. She was voted in 2023 as the best food Instagrammer by Atlanta Magazine in their best of issue. So really well known in the market, and I think has a lot of really great tips and tricks to share for working with creators.
Yeah, she's going to give us some ideas on like what's in a good brief, what's maybe not in a good brief. She talks about some of her experiences in working with attractions, and she gives a couple ideas on how to make your content, quote unquote, go viral.
Yeah, how to make it work for you.
All right, let's get into it. All right, with us is Alyssa Fagan from the ATL Bucket List. Alyssa, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
And Jenny, you've worked with Alyssa in the past, right?
Yeah, working with Atlanta influencers. One of the biggest is here with us today with Alyssa. But Alyssa, you've been doing this forever, 9 years. You started in 2015. Why don't you give us a little bit of background, because that's like an eternity in the influencer space, and things have changed a lot since you first started.
Yes, I know. It is a little bit wild because when I started in 2015, I didn't even know the term influencer. I didn't really know what I was doing, to be honest. I just had moved to Atlanta a few months prior and really fell in love with the city and decided to document all of the things I was doing on Instagram. Fast forward 9 years, and it is now my full-time career, which is just crazy to think. And I feel incredibly lucky to do that. But yeah, it's definitely been a journey. It was not seamless. It was not planned. Now there's a lot more planning, data, strategy behind posting and partnerships and all of that. But in 2015, I kind of just went on Instagram and started posting some really bad iPhone photos. And it kind of took off. And I think a huge piece of what made ATL Bucket List really successful was definitely timing. Think back to 2015, there really, I mean, especially in Atlanta, and I would say Atlanta and smaller cities, there weren't a lot of people doing what I am now doing. I think today there's a ton of competition and there's so many amazing creators. Back then, it was just a handful of us. So it was pretty cool kind of seeing how that growth just was exponential, and just navigating an industry that really not a lot of people knew about.
So
Yeah.
Go ahead, Jenny.
So 2015 you start. It's 2024. Like, how has your follower base changed since then? You're at, I think, almost 400,000 followers on Instagram alone, right? Like, what does that look like in terms of the size of your followers?
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously looking at like the nitty gritty, there's all the analytics on the back end. And I will say, I think a huge piece of what has made ATL Bucket List really successful is the fact that my largest audience is, females between the ages of 25 and 34, which is me. So I think I'm really able to tap into the mindset of my perfect audience because I think about the things that are important to me, things that will resonate with me. And that is easy for me to do because I fit that demographic. But it certainly, obviously started at zero. Everybody starts at zero. So for, anyone thinking about starting, you just got to do it. But it certainly has kind of ebbed and flowed. I mean, I think I saw a ton of growth at the beginning. And then as things changed on Instagram, the launch of Instagram stories and then Instagram Reels took everyone by surprise. Like when I started ATL Bucket List in 2015, it was a photo sharing app with no other features. So I think that has been a big challenge, but also a huge opportunity in the growth of really all creators on Instagram is how can you best maximize those new pieces of the platform. And that's certainly something that I feel I have really leaned into. I mean, I rarely do photo content. I'll do it every once in a while, but I really lean into video, which I think gives a really big opportunity for influencers who are partnering with brands. Because instead of just, posting one photo, you really get to tell a larger story. And I think that has shown to be more effective when trying to, sell tickets to an experience or something like that, because you really get to show off a glimpse into what you can expect when you attend yourself.
Yeah, no, I love that. I mean, we talk with our clients all the time about it. It's sharing that experience from someone else's point of view too, right? Not just their own, because someone else might that potential customer might not trust you as the advertiser quite as much because it's the highlight reel. But
Sure.
an influencer, a creator sharing some of that, especially someone that they followed for a long time and share a lot of the same kind of similarities and passions with, they really trust that and believe in that. So it's great to get those different point of views. And then also you have the ability to share kind of some of the bad, right? So maybe not in a negative lens, but more of, hey, maybe avoid these days or these times, or here's the tips
Yes,
and tricks I'm going to give you so that you make this the best experience possible.
for sure.
Which is something that you're
And
just not going to put in a TV spot, right?
definitely. And, I think for, the people who kind of struggle with what is influencer marketing, why is it something I should want to invest in? I think it's really good to come back to the root of what it is, and that is word of mouth marketing. Like that has always been something that brands and businesses want to tap into, is having other people talk about how amazing their brand is. And, trusting your friend, having their recommendation means so much more than the brand's recommendation. And that's essentially what influencer marketing is. I mean, I've spent 9 years building up this platform so that people trust me. They see me as a friend. They see me as someone who takes them to these amazing places. So I do think, in a way, it's just that next step of word of mouth marketing.
Jenny, I like her. She's great. All right, Alyssa. So you kind of just went into it a little bit there, but what does that conversation look like with a potential advertiser? Let's say I'm the marketing director at a zoo. I don't know. I got Facebook that I check once a year to say happy birthday to my aunt. I like what you said about the friend, the trust part, but are you selling tickets? How is this like moving the marketing needle for me? How would you answer a question like that?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's always a different level of understanding when I get inquiries about partnering. There are the people who have done influencer marketing, they know it works, they are excited to partner. And then there are some people who are like, okay, I've seen you, I've heard about you, somebody told me I might want to work with you, but like, tell me a little bit more about what I can expect. So when I have a brand reach out to me, like I said, there's usually a variety of understanding of what influencer marketing is. But I think the big thing is having those metrics to really back it up. I mean, I work with an agent. I know a lot of people don't, but I think whether you're doing it on your own or you have a team, I think it's really, really important to prove your value. So look at your analytics, look at your past posts. If you have examples of similar partnerships you've done in the past, it doesn't have to be even the same industry or type of post, but if the goal is the same, trying to sell tickets or trying to get more awareness or whatever that is, if you can show I've done this in the past and here are the results, here's what you can maybe expect. Of course, you can't expect Instagram to put out your content the same way every single time. But having those examples, having analytics, I think it's really important. And I think as an influencer, I appreciate when a brand asks me for that, because it shows me that they care. And they should be asking those questions. They shouldn't just want to work with someone because they have, 200,000 followers. They might have 200,000 fake followers, or just have really bad engagement. So I think it's a smart decision for a brand to ask for those analytics. And then we're able to come up with goals that I think are realistic too. Then you and I can work together to make sure that we are putting together the best content. We are creating those results that you're hoping to see so that as an agency, you can go to your client and say that it was a successful partnership.
Yeah, I like that. And I mean, is there, I don't know, like a bronze, silver, gold package? I mean, like, what do you do exactly? What, if I was the marketing director, what am I going to get?
Yeah. So, I mean, I would say I typically will work with a brand on custom, packages. Um, at the very minimum, there's going to be an Instagram post, usually an Instagram reel, which is the video form of that. But we'll add on giveaways, or we'll add on Instagram stories to kind of supplement what we're doing on a video. Sometimes we will take that same video or a version of the video and put it on TikTok or Facebook. So there are a lot of different things we can do. And then, getting into white labeling content, having brands use the content, advertise the content. That's something also to keep in mind. Working with an influencer isn't just having them post on their platform. You can then work with them to keep that content for yourself and have that be an extra piece of your own content mix, or add it to your paid advertising strategy. So all of that kind of comes together to create the package that I then, sign into a contract with a brand.
Very cool.
Yeah. And I think that's such a good example, because there's probably a mentality from several of just that one and done, right? And then it's like, what did I get? Versus when you're working with someone a little bit more long term, it's, I'm going to get, 2 or 3 posts. I'm going to get it in 2 or 3 channels. I'm going to get to utilize it in my paid ad programs. I'm going to, you just kind of all builds, and you develop a stronger relationship. They're getting a lot more out of it versus just one post that's in, or one video in one spot. And I think that's how brands and advertisers have to think about influencer marketing, is more like the long play of it versus just one time, one person, and then them scratching their head saying like, what did it do for me? Because it's not that it didn't do anything. It's just that it might be a little bit harder to measure or gauge performance compared to everything else that you're running when you're only doing, one quick post like that. So
All right, wait.
I think those are all really good examples. And
I got a hard question for Alyssa. I'm gonna put you on the spot a little bit here. All right, so I'm putting my marketing director hat back on. Some things that I hear is, hey, we're a zoo, we're an aquarium, we're a fun place. People are already coming to my attraction and creating content. You talked about being able to whitelist and bringing the content that you would create into the attraction's ad portfolio, which I think is brilliant. But is there any kind of other benefits in working with someone like you? Like maybe you can speak to your organic audience. Like, once again, people are already coming, they're already sharing videos, check the box. I don't need to invest time and resources into this. What would you say to that?
Yeah, well, I would say a few things. One, I think there's never too much conversation about a brand. I think, yes, it's great that you're getting this organic content. People are coming in and creating content on their own, but working with an influencer is just another piece. It's more people talking about it. I don't think that's a bad thing. Now, second, I also think you're able to kind of help shape the narrative a little bit more when you partner with an influencer. Obviously, you want them to be authentic. Obviously, you want them to share their true experience. But I know from my experience when I work with brands, especially when I work with brands that really get it, or we have really great conversations, I will learn things from working with that brand about that attraction that I would have never known if I just walked in the door. So, there are certain things that I feel like, because we've had calls ahead of time, there's a creator brief. There are certain things that they know are not really widely known when people just walk in the door. Then you're able to really share that message through working with that influencer. I mean, yesterday, I went to the Atlanta History Center, and I found out that they have like a petting zoo. And, it was like, I never even knew that existed. And I think that those types of things are, one, potentially going to get more people in the door. And two, as the creator, that's really cool to me to be like, hey, of course you've heard of the aquarium or the zoo or the botanical garden, but did you know this? And I think those are the types of stories that people get really excited about because it's like, oh, yeah, I've been here a million times. Sure, cool. But did you know about this? And more times than not, they haven't. And it's a reason to get people back in the door.
Absolutely. Yep. And Jenny, I know you and we talk about this quite a bit, but sometimes showing the bad, and I'm using air quotes here, but maybe parking is really, really tough on the, the busy weekends or the busy nights. Maybe that's an area where we can have some more, influencer content to kind of overcome some of the challenges that are inherent with a particular attraction. You're not gonna put that on the TV commercial,
Yeah. Yeah. Or just highlighting the different experiences, like you said, Alyssa. Right. So it's not always just a general admission. There's, if you think of the zoos and aquariums, there's all kinds of like VIP or behind the scenes tours and stuff that maybe you're not going to think of prior to that visit. And then you're not going to schedule it into your day, right? You can't always do everything once you get there. Some of it has to be pre-planned. So just making sure that all of those little additional activities, or special events or exhibits are all promoted really through that content so that people can learn about it.
Oh, I'll add one more. Alyssa's content looks great. It's not just, some guy with an iPhone. I mean, her stuff is awesome. So I'll add that to the list.
That's what you get after 9 years of practice, right?
Well, and I think another thing too is when I work with brands, they have the final say. I'm not just going there, creating content and posting it. There's an approval process. We do back and forth edits, and we can really make sure that it's telling the story that the brand wants to tell. Again, while keeping it authentic, but they do have say in what is going out to the masses.
You're listening to the Marketing Attractions Podcast, conversations on how nonprofit attractions are increasing attendance and sharing their mission through marketing. Your hosts are Ryan Dick and Jenny Williams of Attend Media. Attend Media is a media planning and buying agency specializing in zoos, aquariums, gardens, and museums. For more information, please visit attend.media. Now, back to Ryan and Jenny.
So let's talk about that process a little bit. Like, can you give us an example of what type of things would be in a good brief and maybe what's in a bad brief?
Yeah. Well, I think at the core of it, my favorite briefs are one that have like a ton of useful information. Like I had mentioned before, what, like even just like a summary on like the business, the brand, but then also like what are some like hidden gem things that like would be really cool to highlight in your content. Those types of things are great for me to know going into it so that I can really plan ahead and make sure that I am taking the time to, seek those out and get the content. But I think also the key here is giving all this information, but allowing the creator to have a little bit of free reign. I think in my experience, the worst partnerships I've had are when the brand is just a little bit too rigid, where they're like, I want it to look like this, feel like this, sound like this, like get these exact clips, say these exact things, when it may not really be my style, may not be what my audience wants to see. And then the video flops because they were so strict on what they were expecting. I think it's really important to remember that, a lot of us have been doing this a long time. I've been doing it for 9 years. I know what my audience likes and I know what they don't really care about. So let me lean into the things that I know are going to really get them to care, not focus on the things that are just not that important to them, even if that's, part of your goal. Let's find a happy medium where we're still getting your message across while doing it in a way that I know will be effective for my audience. So going back to the brief, I think as much information as possible, but then let's work together to figure out in that information, what are the key points that we really want to hone in on that you feel is really important and I feel is going to really make a mark on, what my audience cares about.
Yeah. Okay. So it's not a video shoot, right? It's not, you stand here, you say this line, and
exactly.
Let the creator's personality, and I like what you said about this is what my audience is going to care about. So it's more of like a creative partnership, right?
Definitely. Yeah, and I mean, most of the briefs I look at are, pretty simple. It's, a summary about what we're trying to achieve here, maybe some key talking points, but again, like vague, maybe bullet points and messages that you want to get across, but allowing me to do it in the way that I see fit. Calling out a couple of things that might be good content. I appreciate always the direction and the feedback and suggestions. I prefer when there's suggestions, not mandatory. And then obviously going through the exact scope. So, we agreed to do this many posts or stories or, what else you can expect. Just so I, while I'm creating that content, have it fresh in my mind. Okay, not only do I just need to create a reel, but I also have the story frames and we're going to have to repurpose it for TikTok. So maybe, keeping that in mind. So whatever that is, having that on there. But again, I don't think it needs to be some crazy big document. I think as long as we're hitting those key points, I feel really good going into a shoot.
Do you have, I mean, this might be sharing the playbook, so it's whatever you feel comfortable with. But is there kind of like a formula or some ingredients that typically make a quote unquote good video, something that has the potential to go, viral, kind of take off? Is there kind of some things you can share? Uh-oh.
Yes and no. No, it's not. Honestly, it's not even like I don't want to share my secrets. It's more of like, I will say, sometimes I am so confident that a video is going to be the best performing video of my life, and then it will flop, and vice versa. Sometimes I'm like, I don't know about this, and then it does amazing. As a creator and, as brands, I'm sure it's sometimes frustrating because we don't have full control over how a post performs. The algorithm's always changing and, they're telling us to do this and that. And I just saw a video the other day and now they're like, here are what you should do, like all the steps you should take to make a video that's going to perform the best. And it's like completely different information than they gave us a year ago. And, it's hard to keep up sometimes, but I do think the key is one, understanding that people do not have really, they have short attention spans. That is the nature of the audience today. So when I work with brands, I do try to really manage expectations in keeping the video short. I want to get the message across. I don't want it to be, a 6-second video, but I also don't really want to do like a minute long video. So I think timing is a big thing. I think also a hook at the beginning, not trying to be like, scammy or anything like that, but, really getting your message across in that first few seconds, whether it's having some text at the beginning or the first words out of my mouth if I'm doing a voiceover, or a really cool visual being the first frame of the video. I think that's really important in being like, this is why you should stop scrolling and care about what I'm about to say. I think if you have a good hook, then you're more likely to have people stay for the entire video, or at least most of it. So that's always really important to me. Trying to think what else. I mean, and then I think like good visuals. That's why I love having conversations with the brand ahead of time and finding out, I hate to say it, but like, what are like the Instagram worthy shots? What are the things that are going to really catch someone's eye? Because they're scrolling, they're, not always going to stop and watch a video. So what is going to help me grab their attention? And then we can still get all the messages across in a voiceover, or still add some clips in that maybe aren't the, most engaging clips. But I think being able to weave those in is really key.
We're recording this in May of 2024. Jenny, TikTok, is that a thing still?
Yeah, well, I think maybe first, it's end of April 2024, and we know that there's a lot of changes that could potentially happen with TikTok. It's all still guesses in terms of what will happen, so we won't try to debate that. But let's just talk to us a little bit about, as TikTok's really, I think probably over the last year or so, really become important for a lot of creators. Like, how is it different maybe than Instagram for you, and how's it helped grow your audience, and how important the channel is to you?
Yeah, it's crazy that it's such a different audience. That was the first thing that I learned. I started posting on TikTok a couple of years ago, and I remember the first thing I did was like, oh, wow, I have this big audience on Instagram. I'm just going to post on a story and be like, follow me on TikTok. That did nothing for me because most of my Instagram audience is not really the same TikTok audience. My Instagram audience, I will say, is mostly over the age of 25. I had mentioned earlier 25 to 34 is my biggest age range, but then it gets older before it gets younger. So a lot of the people who have been my loyal followers on Instagram for years don't really care about TikTok. They're staying on that platform. Now, I find on TikTok, now that I do have an audience there, it's usually a much younger demographic. And I even remember one time, I don't even know how this came up, but I was out and I met this group of like, 20-year-old people, and they're like, oh, we don't even go on Instagram. Like Instagram. And it was just crazy to me because I spend so much time on Instagram. But they really just use TikTok. So I think it's really important to know that it's such a different audience. And not to say, I'm on TikTok too. So there are older people on TikTok as well, but I don't think your audience on one will translate to an audience on another necessarily. So I think that's one thing. But I also think that, one, I feel for the people who have built their entire business on having, a huge platform on TikTok. I'm sure this is a very nerve-wracking time. We don't know what's going to happen. Luckily, I don't think anything's going to happen soon, but I think it's a good time to maybe think about diversifying. I think a lot of the people who do have large followings on TikTok have been able to, over the years, build large, maybe not as large, but large followings on Instagram too. But I think the biggest takeaway is that it is so important to diversify your platforms. I know for me, even, TikTok is definitely my secondary. Instagram is my primary. But one of my big goals in last year was building an email newsletter list, because I was just like, we don't know what's going to happen to any of these, like, especially now what we're seeing with TikTok. I mean, I don't necessarily think Meta is going away, but, it's, you never know what the next platform is going to be. You also, like I mentioned earlier, don't always have the ability to control how well content performs and all of that. And of course, that's true with any platform, but I think it's just really wise to think about where can you build an audience that is a little bit more controlled by yourself. And that's kind of why I leaned into email a little bit more last year. I will say I haven't done too much with it this year. It's been a busy start to the year, but I think it's really important to just think about not putting all your eggs in one basket, because these are all, I guess, like borrowed channels, if it's Meta or if it's TikTok or, I think there have been, Vine that came and went. There was something that everyone was like really into called Lemonade for like a couple months, and then it never turned into anything. So I think just the key is like, again, not just, especially if it's your career or you're a brand and you're like, okay, I'm using social media to get my message out. You really do need to do a little bit of a few things, not a little bit of everything. Nobody can do a little bit of everything, but really like focus on a couple. And yeah.
Yeah, no, that's so, so important. I think as, probably every marketer is like, yeah, that's like my pain point is that I'm having to do so many different channels, but it is really important, especially those own channels as well, too, like you mentioned. I think it's super interesting what you said, though, just the difference in the audience. I think most people would just assume, like you mentioned, that your Instagram followers are your TikTok followers. And it's not just like 100% duplication between the two channels, right? It's a very unique audience that you're getting. And I think as we think through what happens with something like Threads or what happens with, YouTube Shorts, like those audiences are going to be different too. You're going to have overlap in some of them, of course, but the audience is very different. So, working across at least 2 or 3 platforms can ensure that you're growing and scaling a unique audience, not just serving that same content to the same audience in 3 different channels. So
yes. Well, and I think, especially when I'm working with brands and, a lot of times I will take a video that I'm putting on Instagram and then post it also to TikTok. And I think the fact that my audiences are so different is a win, because again, you're not just reaching the same people that saw it on Instagram, but on TikTok. No, it's a completely different audience. So I feel like that makes it a little bit more beneficial to a brand because they know that they've now hit two separate audiences.
Yeah, no, that's a great point.
Well, just in case there's somebody, a brand in Atlanta that hasn't heard of ATL Bucket List, Alyssa, how can people get in touch with you?
I mean, best way is either email alyssa@atlbucketlist.com or shooting me a DM. Find me on Instagram, send me a message, and I will try to get back to you as soon as possible. I love what I do and I love working with brands. So it's been a lot of fun the past 9 years.
Thank you so much for the time, Alyssa.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Marketing Attractions Podcast. If you have a suggestion for a topic or would like to be a guest on the show, please visit our website at marketingattractionspodcast.com.